I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar, Internet of Things and Cybersecurity Risk. Are you prepared? Webinar. This webinar is sponsored by the Center for Innovative Technology, and we've got being presented by Dave Ihrie of CIT and Roy Luebke of GenEdge Alliance. Quickly, a brief overview of a little bit about CIT. CIT is a state-funded nonprofit here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Our mission is to help accelerate the next generation of technology and technology companies throughout the Commonwealth. CIT Entrepreneurs Division works to help those companies in the Commonwealth as well as university researchers access the critical required funding to help their companies grow. We do this through the GAP Fund, which is an investment seed fund for early stage high growth potential companies throughout the state, as well as the Federal Funding Assistance Program, which I manage, that engages with early stage researchers to help them learn about and apply for federal R&D grants like the SBIR and STTR research grant programs that 11 federal agencies participate in. We provide mentoring, support, guidance, training, and other one-on-one efforts to help those companies learn about and apply for those valuable non-dilutive funding sources. We also, CIT helped start and engages actively currently with the Mach 37 Cyber Accelerator. Dave, did you want to talk a little bit about the Cyber Accelerator?
Yes, just briefly. This is Dave Ihrie from CIT. So Mach 37 is an internationally recognized cyber accelerator. We help create new cybersecurity focused businesses, and we're now have received interest, attention, applications, and investment from around the country and across the world. So we are getting ready for our spring cohort that begins in the middle of next March. For anybody who's interested in cybersecurity startups, now's the time to apply.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that. So as for those who are involved, I know there are some of the Mach 37 cohort companies that are on this webinar today. So for those that are interested, certainly reach out. The contact information is at the bottom of this screen, and we will send these slides to everybody on the line so that you will have this information as well. A couple quick overview of what we've got coming up in regards to other training. We have next week a DoD. Actually, we've added the Homeland Security to this event as well. So it's both the DoD and Homeland Security SBIR STTR proposal workshop here at CIT. It's low cost and available. We have seats available there. We've also got the NSF SBIR webinar series coming up in January and February. These are all really low cost for Virginia companies as well as non-Virginia companies. So we encourage you to engage with that, look at that, and we will add everybody who's registered to today's webinar to my monthly federal funding newsletter list, so you'll be kept aware of these and other opportunities coming up. And we also have other live training workshops throughout the state coming up in March, as listed here on this page. We've also got some pre-recorded sessions. We will record today's session as well and post it to our website. So if you're looking to learn a little bit more about the SBIR program, there's a lot of free webinars available at the URL below this slide. Again, we will send this to everybody so you don't have to try to write this down in a short matter. So we will go ahead and get that to everybody. So any questions, please let me know. I'm Robert Brook. As I mentioned to you, I'm the Director of Federal Funding Programs here at CIT. As I manage today's webinar, you can certainly ask questions. If you wanted to send an email, use the questions box, and the questions box will submit the question to me. I will see that, and I will then convey the question to the speakers at the appropriate time. If for some reason we need to wait to move things along so we end the session on time, we will go ahead and move that question to the end. And if for some reason we don't answer it, we save the log and we can get back with you directly, and all our contact information will be provided. So we want to make sure your questions are answered in good order. We should be ending a little after 2 o'clock today. We will again have some Q&A time here, and with that I will go ahead and introduce our speakers. And my contact information is on the screen here as well. I get the speakers introduced. I'll start with Roy. Roy Luebke is an innovation and growth consultant with GenEdge Alliance. He's based in Fairfax, Virginia. GenEdge is the Virginia manufacturing extension partner with Virginia state government and the U.S. Department of Commerce. Throughout his 30-year career, he has delivered dozens of successful technology-based product and service offerings in global markets for Fortune 50, as well as startup companies in healthcare, enterprise software, and consumer markets. He uses structured innovation, strategy, and portfolio methods to define business strategy, conduct research to discover new customer needs, create and deliver new solutions, and commercialize offerings that increase business profitability. Dave Ihrie is the Chief Technology Officer here at both the Center for Innovative Technology, as well as in that capacity at Mach 37 Cybersecurity Accelerator. He has over 30 years industry experience as a direct innovator in the fields of satellite and terrestrial communications, computing, and information science. He has been principal in 7 startup companies in industries ranging from nuclear power to digital broadcasts to analytic software for the intelligence community. With that, I will go ahead and bring up the next the formal presentation. And Dave, why don't you take it away? And again, if there's any questions, please, folks, submit that via the questions box, and we will get that question posed and answered shortly. Thank you so much.
Okay, so thanks, Rob. So we're going to talk about the Internet of Things and cybersecurity, and particularly with a focus on small businesses and the advanced manufacturing sector. And in addition to what businesses need to know, what small businesses need to know about these areas, we want to provide some resources, some options. We're working to establish a pilot program so we can actively go out and help small businesses in the Commonwealth deal with this issue. So as we move through the material, we'll look to provide those options. And there we go. So, you know, certainly everybody has heard about the Internet of Things. Part of the reason, if you look earlier this year, Gartner's hype cycle, the Internet of Things was at the very peak of the hype cycle. I think you can. It's hard to avoid articles or discussions about the Internet of Things, and you know, there is an incredible amount of hype both about the promise and fears for these kinds of technologies. Part of the reason for this is the market's going to be huge. If you look at projections out through the end of this decade, if you look at the Internet of Things, the number of devices is going to swamp everything else put together, including, you know, personal computers and smartphones and handheld devices. And so that market opportunity is really what has gotten such a huge interest from everybody. In addition to that, if you look at the amount of traffic on the Internet of Things is going to be the primary driver of that traffic. So as we move forward over the next 5 to 10 years, by far, most of the traffic that we see on the Internet will be machines talking to other machines, devices talking, or sensors talking to computers, and no human in the loop at all. So this is, from a computing, from an Internet point of view, this is really has all the makings of the dominant trend over the next decade or two. Now, there's a lot of people have a lot of different definitions of what is the Internet of Things. To me, one of the big enablers has been the rapid reduction in the price of the sensor technology. So there's certainly, we've had distributed computing before, we've had powerful computers in our pockets, but what's different about the Internet of Things is the ability to inexpensively put so many different sensors throughout the world, whether they be on you know, commercial networks or in industrial settings, and so that just like Moore's law has driven down the price of computing over time, the drop in the cost of a variety of different kinds of sensors is part of the underlying technology trend driving the Internet of Things. And if you look at this, what are the use cases? Well, it's really a dominant one is going to be the industrial internet. And in fact, if you look at this, BI Intelligence has broken down the projected number of devices by sector in terms of billions of devices. Consumer, the home market there on the top is a significant fraction, but not the dominant one, and it's clearly both enterprises and the government and infrastructure market that are going to be driving the overall trend. And in fact, it's probably true that there's not a single industrial internet. There's probably some sectorization of how that's going to be implemented. So for example, if you look at the vehicle market, the autonomous vehicles and transportation more generally, the kinds of issues that they're addressing, the types of underlying technologies, the data points that they're sensing, and what the systems will do in response to that are very different than what the utility infrastructure is seeing or what the consumer market is seeing. So I think as people think about, as businesses think about the Internet of Things and how to focus on that as a potential market, you really need to look at the sectors of that market. On the industrial side, GE, for example, is a leader in this market. It's pretty interesting that GE has kind of converted itself over the last few years from a financial services company. They've now sold off GE Capital and are reinvesting that money in the manufacturing sector, and they're really positioning themselves actually as a data company, a data analytics company. So as you can see, they're monitoring 10 million sensors every day on $1 trillion worth of equipment. And what they're really, if you're an airline and you've deployed a number of jet engines, or in this case a picture of a gas turbine, the kinds of promise that GE is making to the market now is because they're actively monitoring the things that they sell, they can improve the performance, they can guarantee certain levels of performance and quality in their products. You can see, of course, this is huge. Just the digital security products, not that capital equipment itself, but the digital security products and services in this market is about $2 billion a year and growing very rapidly. And on the consumer side, well, Vince Cerf, the father of the internet, used to like to talk about never losing your socks again because everything would be connected. And sure enough, we have all heard many stories, many devices now connected in the consumer internet. But people are worried about it, and I think with good cause. If you look at some of the data that's out there, 65%, for example, are afraid that their devices are maybe hacked sometime in the future. It's probably much higher than that currently. There are very few devices on the market that have not been at least proven to be hackable. People view it as burglary, but there's no way currently to lock the front door. So this is a big market, a dominant trend going forward, and but security is an issue. And so what does that look like? We would have hoped by now, perhaps 20 years into the the evolution of the internet, that we understand a bit about cybersecurity and how to fix it, but no, that's not the case. Here's one study, for example, data that's looked at the how many of the top 10 Internet of Things devices have various security flaws, and the answer is all of them that they looked at in this study have some flaws, and the majority have flaws in every category, vulnerabilities in every category that they looked at. So the reality on the ground is that this is an area that's growing very fast, but it's also an area that has significant cybersecurity vulnerabilities, and that combination is really catching the attention of policymakers in the government and everywhere. One of the things that we hear, particularly from manufacturers, is, well, we're not a target. We're small, maybe a small company. We don't, we don't have a lot of compute power. We don't have a lot of intellectual property, so we're not really a target. But if you look at the current data, for example, this year's Verizon's data breach report, the manufacturing sector in particular, 94% of those attacks are against manufacturers are either crimeware or cyber espionage. So those types of companies are indeed a very large target. Almost better than 20% of them, 1 out of every 5, has actually suffered intellectual property loss within the past year. And as we've talk about this, we're talking about this for small businesses in general, but in particular for the advanced manufacturing sector. It turns out that a very large percentage of the jobs in the advanced manufacturing sector are in fact with small companies, with companies with fewer than 100 employees. So if you don't think that you're a target, you need to think again. And what happens? Well, if you are in fact attacked or subject to a data breach, the bleak reality is that most small businesses don't recover. The data is that nearly 60% of those businesses go out of business within 6 months after being a victim. Now there's a little bit of context here. Some of those businesses may have gone out of business anyway. There's also some baseline rate even for businesses that aren't attacked, but still this is a significant number. It's very difficult to recover, and small businesses are being increasingly targeted by hackers of all types. And then also let's talk briefly about the regulatory environment. So as I mentioned, this combination of very rapid growth, sort of the addition of these types of sensing devices in every sector of our economy, combined with the lack of security, has really gotten the regulators interested. And so the fact of the matter is that both the compliance requirements and the liability are increasing pretty rapidly for everybody, including small companies. Just recently, the Pentagon has finally come out and said that their prime contractors are requiring to notify them when certain types of cyber attacks occur. That will clearly flow down the supply chain to smaller manufacturers in the supply chain. Increasingly the federal government is putting cybersecurity requirements into all of the contracts that they write. So certainly for anybody, small businesses, manufacturers are currently or are anticipating being in the federal government supply chain, you will need to pay attention to this as part of the cost of doing business. The standard right now is the cybersecurity framework. It is not a compliance document, but many places are starting to treat it that way. And if you listen to people like Julie Brill, is doing some great work at the FTC on the enforcement profile. On the enforcement side, her comment on this is it basically says know what your security profile is, and constantly look to monitor and improve that posture. So here's some of the NIST. These are some of the compliance documents from NIST, a set of security controls, risk assessment. And one of the things that caught my attention early on is if your product contains software, even if it's from a third party, the government may consider your product to be a defective product. So that's a classification that comes with criminal and legal implications. If you deliver defective products to the government, it's not a good thing. And so if you're delivering software to the government, you need to make sure that you're not accepting software that comes with malware pre-installed. You need to be paying attention to publicly reported vulnerabilities in your software, and find ways to mitigate exploitable weaknesses. So this is a pretty high hurdle. Nobody in the federal supply chain has really fully come to grips with this, but it is going to be a matter of increasing focus, perhaps rapidly increasing focus, given some of the recent events. And the FTC, as I mentioned, is getting involved. They're now starting to be active on the enforcement side. They've put together, I think, actually a very balanced report, privacy and security in a connected world for the Internet of Things. It's definitely worth a read, as that kind of documentation, that kind of standard becomes increasingly implemented in the world. And so it really looks at, calls out three areas: data security, basically building in security to start, defense in depth, including both your partners and your employees, and the ability to maintain your product over the life cycle because things change rapidly, certainly in the cybersecurity domain. The second big area is data minimization. So if you're collecting data, know what you're collecting, why you're collecting it, how you're storing it, when it is that you're going to delete it, and make sure that you understand the risks of keeping and storing personally identifiable information, or looking at ways to de-identify that. And then the third big area is notice and choice. And so meaningful choice to consumers, the ability to understand, not bury the agreements in those 40-page online click-through things that nobody ever reads, but meaningful choice and the ability to opt in to data collection, personal data collection in exchange for a set of services, and visibility then when that collected data is repurposed for other uses. So I think for anybody looking in this field, those are sort of good guidelines to live by. And then let me briefly address cyber insurance. This is the picture there is actually a panel that Mach 37 put together in conjunction with some of our partners to try and better understand the cyber insurance market. I think this is a very early stage market, and so there's a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation floating around out there. So it's really a risk management mechanism. It really focuses on reducing the costs to a business after an incident has occurred, so the cost of responding to an incident and recovering from that, if there are any secondary lawsuits that are associated with a breach, and so on. And so what it is it's a way for businesses to manage the cost risks associated with cybersecurity. At a minimum, it requires a business to know that something has happened in order to initiate a claim. And so there's at least a minimum standard of capability for a business to be able to say, yes, I've been hacked, here's what I think the damages are, and use that to generate a claim. And then if you look at the claims themselves, I think you'll see a couple of things pop out. One is that almost 50% of the claims are from what they classify as nano-cap or micro-cap businesses, or businesses under $300 million revenue. And the average payouts are, as you can see there, relatively small. If you're talking, in some cases, some of the larger breaches, Target and so on, some of those damages have been running into the hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. So the ability of insurance to cover those kinds of costs for a business are limited at best. So cyber insurance can be a useful tool, but a business has to look at that in the context of what else it's doing on the risk side. All right, so with that, it's a bit of a daunting landscape out there. We think there are some things that you can do about this. And sort of the key aspect of that is risk management. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Roy and talk a bit about risk management and some of the things that we're trying to do to support that set of activities. So, right?
Thanks, Dave. And thanks to everyone that's joined the presentation today. A couple things that we're going to talk about now are some things that we've got in the works that we're putting together as business offerings for 2016, because what we're seeing is a driving force, certainly in Virginia, is that a lot of businesses, industrial, manufacturing, and research companies in Virginia are dealing with Department of Defense and federal government, not to mention state government. And those organizations are going to be increasing their regulations on third parties that are dealing with them as part of the supply chain. So the smaller the business, the weaker the link they become in a full supply chain. And so when you think about bad guys doing bad things and trying to steal things and break things, they're going to be trying to come in at the weakest point in that chain. And so what we found, Dave and I have been researching this and working on putting together some things for small businesses in Virginia now for over a year. And what we found is there's really two sides to this coin. One is the technical side of things. And a lot of folks in small business are taking the approach that, well, it's a technical problem, and the guy in IT will buy some stuff, and he'll help create an iron dome, and everything will be good. And that's just not the fact. The flip side of that coin is that there are business policies and practices and governance that needs to come into play that will be able to help mitigate the exposure to loss that a company could incur. What we've learned is that it's not a matter of that you might be hacked. I think the point that all small businesses need to realize is they are already compromised at this point in time. Whether it's their employees that have personal information that's been exposed somewhere that's at risk, whether it's their network, whether it's their infrastructure, whether it's their product or the supply chain, somewhere in your world, you just haven't found it yet. The types of risk that you're exposed to are things like intellectual property, your unique technical capabilities within your company can be exposed and stolen. Customer or staff information. You become a connection to your partners. There's ability to breach through communication, automation systems, a number of different ways. Now, as we're talking about the Internet of Things, right, you could put a chip on pretty much anything and make it network enabled. And if it's network enabled, it can have something on it that can launch at any time. And it might not be a destructive thing. It might be a listening thing. A lot of what's going on with cyber damage really is the fact that it's listening and it's waiting and it's watching and it's collecting data about you. So you could both have something going out into the world with a bad thing on it. It could come into your world as having a bad thing on it, or it could be affecting someone else down the line. So from a manufacturing standpoint, the thing that you're building could actually be exposed to some kind of a damage instrument. And the smaller the business, a breach or an actual exposure could take the business and completely take it out of business. So it's not just a matter of a little bit of financial loss. It could actually put you completely out of business. So what are we talking about with risk? What is risk, right? We throw that word out a lot, and it's really very simple. It's just the probability of a negative outcome later as you're looking through this deck. There's lots of different ways that you can help yourself. A couple of things that jumped out at us as we were looking through it. One of the things is that companies are buying a lot of tools, and there's no particular one silver bullet in terms of a technical tool that's going to keep you completely, totally secure. You can't buy a total platform to do it. What you have to do is look at it from the standpoint of, where do I have the highest amount of exposure, and where is my business facing the highest amount of potential loss? And then how can you put together a series of different things and chain them together, both from a policy and governance standpoint as well as a technical standpoint, understanding what the changes are in regulations. That is only going to get heavier over time. Regulatory world is going to continue to grow, especially if you're looking at doing business with governmental entities. That's really going to grow over time, and that burden is going to become more and more of an expense that you're just going to have to deal with. And while the big things that we hear out in the world are the big breaches, Target and Anthem and OPM and this kind of thing, what you're not hearing about are the things that are percolating along, as on a chip somewhere that can pop up at any point in time, or more nefariously, can actually just be a listening agent. And you won't even know that it's going on. And it's just watching, informing, and letting somebody know what your organization is up to and what your partners' organizations are up to. I'm trying to move the slide here, so bear with me just one second. There we go. So what is the NIST framework? I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on this. You can go download the framework actually from NIST. It's available there on the link. It's not that complicated. It's really just it's a roadmap. And it's saying roadmap of what? Well, it's giving you some information about where to go within your organization to identify your potential risks. It's talking then about how to protect yourself and what would be the different areas and different levels of protection. And that's where a lot of people are focused right now, right? They're trying to build what we call the Iron Dome and saying, okay, well, we're not going to let any bad stuff in, and the fact of the matter is it is going to come in. They're also spending a lot of money on tools to detect things, and the tools have certain level of performance, good and bad. That those filters are not going to always work. And so when something does break, what is your response level going to be from a disaster recovery, disaster response standpoint? Something is going to happen to you at some point in time. It might not be as colorful as some of the big media stories that we've read. But what are you going to do? What will be your response level? And then how are you going to recover? So, again, it's not a big, hairy, audacious document to wade through. It's really a pretty straightforward and fundamental look. The point being that large entities, whether they're a large prime, whether they're a large company like P&G selling products into the consumer market, or whether they're companies that are selling into the federal or DoD space, those large organizations are going to be driving their focus through this framework. And to be a supply chain partner and work with them, it's going to be necessary to be conversant in and following those different framework elements. So a few things about creating a stronger cybersecurity position is to look internally and externally to prioritize and scope out the range of risks that you have, to get familiar with the different types of systems and assets that you have, what's going on in the regulatory world, and what is going to be your approach to managing your approach to the risk exposure that you have. What are your vulnerabilities and threats and that type of thing? And you can start out very simply by simply profiling yourself and saying, what is it that you have? And doing a risk assessment that says, where are the big holes? What could be coming at you? And then ultimately creating a profile of what you would really want it to yourself to look like in the future. So it's not a matter of trying to eat the elephant in one bite. It's saying, let's start with the biggest things that could hurt us, and then how are we going to address these issues over time and prioritize the gaps that you have, and then actually have an action plan that you can begin to implement now and be more proactive in making the business safer over the long run. So we're starting to frame out an approach to managing a risk process, and we're looking at a couple of key elements. And again, this can get a little bit more, a lot more detailed. But we're talking about looking at the context of both the internal factors and the external factors that could impact your business. We're looking at the different elements of risk. What are your criteria revolving around risk, and then what are your risk policies and governance approaches from the standpoint of conducting a risk assessment. It's really identifying what the different areas of exposure to loss you might have, what are the probabilities of loss, and being able to structure that and prioritize those elements, analyzing where your risk is, and then basically taking evaluating the risk in terms of the probability of getting something bad happening, and then what is the probability of loss. What are you looking at in terms of the downside if something does happen? And then once you start to implement your risk treatment, and you're actually then trying to build barriers both from a procedural training standpoint with your employees, both physical and cyber security kinds of elements, then how are you communicating and keeping a program going over the long term inside your company, as well as with your partners as well. So this is going to be a two-way street, and then monitoring and reviewing these risks over an extended period of time. Where the cybersecurity risk really starts to rear its head is in the supply chain. Certainly, you as an individual business are looking at protecting your own facility and your own environment, but where do you fit in the whole scheme of things? So there's lots of different supply chain risks that can be caused by or influenced by cybersecurity risks. So it can include accidents, physical accidents that are caused, labor availability, laws and regulations that are going on, as well as technology trends. In the supplier world, you've got both physical and regulatory issues that you're dealing with your suppliers. What kinds of production issues does your supplier have? Are your suppliers doing anything to be able to secure their own manufacturing facilities, and what do their financial losses look like, and how might that impact your organization? And looking upstream, in the supply chain to say, what are those folks up there doing, and how are we going to be integrating with them, and how are we going to be interrelating with those folks? What is your distribution channel risk? What happens to their capacity, those distribution partners that you have? What kinds of cargo problems might they have? Because there's lots of different elements right in the supply chain in terms of your shipping, getting from your warehouse down the road to the ship, over the water, and when it gets delivered to another place, there's lots and lots of different points along that line where you've got exposure to loss. And lots of different parties in that supply chain. So the more parties there are in a supply chain, the more the risk exposure starts to go up as well. So I'm advancing my slide here, and I'm getting a bit of a delay, so just bear with me. The next step in all of this then is risk mitigation. It's saying once you've recognized it, how do you get rid of it? You have to assume that something is going to happen to you, so you have to plan for those types of things, and how are you going to recover? So it's not just a technical recovery, right? It's a brand recovery as well. You've got a certain amount of trust, and you've got relationships with both your suppliers as well as your clients, and you're going to have to have an approach to recovering that reputation when something happens. You can mitigate your risk by looking at your security policies. What are you doing to protect yourself, and what are you doing to train your employees and your partners on how to mitigate the risks? And then, as Dave talked about, cyber insurance is starting to evolve. There's not a lot of companies today that are offering cyber insurance policies because they don't even know how to underwrite that risk. They don't know what the real exposure is. So, but this is going to change, and it's going to change dramatically because there's a lot of money in that space to be earned and to be lost. And so it's a very early time in cyber insurance. So the whole point about this cyber security framework and your approaches to identifying your risk and managing your risk will then come into play as you go try to purchase some insurance from an insurance company. And the more you have structure and management around this exposure, the more control you're going to have ultimately on the premiums that you end up paying. Because if you're in control of it and you're going to an insurance company and you're saying, these are the things that we're doing, you then become a better risk for them than someone who is completely operating in the Wild West, and they're having to guess at what the exposure is. And then cyber attorneys are going to be evolving in this space as well, because as we said, there are going to be a lot more regulations at the state, local, and federal level, which means you're going to have somebody that is conversant in that, and ultimately you're going to have some very specific guidance coming from the legal beagles in terms of what is going on in the universe of regulatory drivers as well. I'm getting a little bit of a delay. So to make a long story short here, CIT and GenEdge, both being Virginia Commonwealth entities, GenEdge is a nonprofit that is actually an agency of the state government for Virginia, and also funded partially by the U.S. Department of Commerce. We're looking at this saying we recognize that small businesses can't afford the $300 to $500 an hour cybersecurity specialists and all of the different elements that are going on out in that world to try to put together this perfect, secure, safe place. What we're looking at is saying, what can we do to put together a number of different elements that will be able to bring a more affordable solution to the small businesses. The small business environment. So we're looking at CIT as being a thought leader and being able to bring information to bear, looking at the Mach 37 companies and that universe as being a consortium of potential technical solutions, as well as assessment partners that can help uncover the risk exposure. And then GenEdge coming at this from being from the standpoint of saying how can you put together a solid risk management program and blending all of these three things together within the guidance that the cybersecurity framework provides. So if you look at this chart on the left-hand side from the top to the bottom, ad hoc level 0 security being to a fully adaptive security environment level 5, that's really structured within the cybersecurity framework. And going across the service area, there's a number of different potential partners that could be involved in this thing. And so because we're a nonprofit entities here, what we could do is bring bleeding edge technology providers that are in the lab at Mach 37 out into the Virginia world to help be able to address some of those technical issues, as well as some of the more complex business issues of structuring a risk management infrastructure and helping to provide some ability to prioritize where the highest probability of attacks might be and the highest amount of loss that an organization might be looking at.
And if I can jump in there for a moment, Roy.
Yeah.
So this seems like a natural fit. As you say, both of us are Virginia-based not-for-profits. The GenEdge charter is to work directly with small companies, with small manufacturers, and to help introduce new capabilities to them. Our charter is to help start new businesses, and over the last 2 years, we've now helped 29 cybersecurity businesses get started. Every single one of them with world-class leading-edge technology, and so we think this is really all the ingredients to really help Virginia move forward as a leader in helping small businesses and small manufacturers address this very complex space. And we from everything we know, Virginia is in the lead in this area. We of all the manufacturing extension partnerships across the country, of which GenEdge is one, we seem to be the first ones moving out to try to address this in a robust way. So we're looking forward. We're now actively beginning to pilot this kind of interaction with small businesses who are interested in taking the next steps in addressing these types of risks.
Yeah, and a lot of companies, because of where we're at in the whole kind of product cycle with cybersecurity, they're going after the low-hanging fruit to make the most amount of money, which is a logical approach. And so they're going after larger organizations with deeper pockets that have more money, at stake, larger losses, and certainly that, that makes sense. But you also have to, so what we're looking at it from the standpoint of saying, there are 7,000 manufacturers, industrial companies in Virginia, and most of them are under 100 employees. The vast majority are less than 50 employees, and they're in that supply chain. So they're creating vulnerabilities, but they don't have deep pockets to pay out hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy solutions. And so we believe that taking advantage of the fact that we're government entities and have access to some of these newer technologies and that kind of thing, we feel pretty comfortable in saying that we'll be able to put together a really affordable type of a solution that's not going to break the bank for small businesses, and are going to be able to help them compete and stay in business, operating in this complex environment where there are, it's just increasing, it's not decreasing in terms of the threats that are out there. And so, you can't break the bank on a small business. There's only so much money there's only so much cash to go around. And so that's kind of the approach that we've been taking, is how can we help give smaller entities some relief and get them access to better information, more effective information, help them reduce their uncertainty, help them, instead of buying a lot of tools and having to try to link all these different things together, get a more a more comprehensive approach to this thing, and put the right tool in the right place, given the right given the client specific openings and problems and issues and that kind of thing. So anyway, that's kind of what we're up to right at the moment.
Do you want me to bring it home and then we can open it up for questions?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I just hit the button. You can roll it.
Yeah.
We're running out of time.
So we put together a simple initial questionnaire. This is how we would start to interact with a company that's working here. This is the whole thing. It's one page. It would help us get you focused in the right place in the matrix that we just showed you, and start matching the kinds of needs that a small business have with the kind of capabilities that are available out there. So again, if you're interested in this kind of interaction, we are definitely looking to find businesses that have a need and are interested in helping us pilot this kind of approach. So here's the summary. Internet of Things is a huge market. This is going to be a dominant market trend for years and decades. If you're playing in this market, you're a target. The issues are there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and those issues are growing. And at this point, you're at your peril if you ignore the security implications of the market. But there are ways to get help. We think we have some capability here that can directly help small businesses looking to find ways to enter this market, or to continue as part of the existing supply chains in this market. And I think with that, we're ready to open it up for questions.
Currently, there no questions came through yet. So I encourage those who are on the line, if you have a question, please go ahead and let us know. I had a comment. You guys stated earlier, you listed where was that? A bunch of weaknesses. Is that it? Yeah, and so from a perspective that I come from, this is Robert again. I engage with small companies who are trying to develop new technologies, and oftentimes they're, the question is the scope of a project, an idea, a concept. For example, with the National Science Foundation's SBIR grant program, it's $150K to about $225,000 is the max award for about a 6-month project there. And in any one of these topic areas that are listed here can be an entire project if you've got some concepts and ideas on how to approach that. And it goes all through the supply chain. When you're talking about manufacturing, you can have an entire concept of a project and security specifically for small manufacturers that an agency like the NSF would have really high interest in funding if it's a game-changing idea that needs to be vetted out and proved, and you've got a 2 or 3 year cycle of time to fully develop that sort of thing, because that's the challenge with some of the federal funding, is that there does take many years of the project, but that's actually what it takes to validate and verify, and for certifications, and especially in some of the things they're talking about with these new certifications. So that could be critical funding for you to develop that sort of thing. Someone asked a question here: do you see a market for the creation of an IoT certification program, basically a certification that rivals Cisco's certs, but in the areas of smart cities, car hacking, etc.?
So this is Dave. I think there is a set of technology certifications, and I think the people who do those kinds of certification as a living, SANS Institute and others, for example, will adapt, their existing programs to those types of certifications. But I think the other thing that I would expect to see evolving is sort of business certifications in the insurance market, in the cyber insurance market. And the way that market is structured right now, generally insurance companies only have a couple of hours to turn around a quote, and so they have no way in that time frame of assessing the security posture of a business that they hope to provide insurance for. So the only mechanism that's going to make that a viable insurance industry over the longer term is some third-party certification that says yes, this business is operating at some security level. They're a 82% risk, whatever the scale happens to be, so that there's some sanity in the pricing of cyber insurance relative to the security posture of the business.
Yeah, and this is Roy. Dave and I have talked about this numerous times in terms of certifications, and the conclusion that we came to, which is what kind of is the basis of that product service matrix that we showed, is that a company can document by using the NIST cyber framework its practices and the tools that it's using and the governance that it's using to function at a certain level within the framework. So you could really self-certify yourself by saying, here's what we've done. So we're really at a security level 3 according to the cyber framework because we've done these certain things. And in fact, we have a third-party company that we're looking at bringing into this program that's what their product does, is to help a company kind of document and visualize the risks that it has and the exposures that it has along the different levels of the cyber framework, so that through a combination of your own assessment and then a mitigation plan and a overarching kind of a dashboard, if you will, that shows what steps you are taking and what you're planning to take. Now you've kind of built this, the company ends up building its own security posture that it can then go out and say to an insurance company or a government entity or a potential partner, here's where we are. This is what we've done, and here we're documented. This is not just us kind of pulling something out of thin air. This is a structured, managed approach that we're taking. And that's what our view on it is that would be more beneficial in the long run than, trying to go out and say, well, I'm certified in some particular tool or some particular element of all of this. It's the whole approach rather than the individual pieces, if that makes sense.
There's another question came through here. It says, my company manufactures sensors and sensor control equipment for IoT, Internet of Things. Would GenEdge be available to review the security of our system so that we can assist our customers to assure them with security issues? So I guess a little bit about what the kind of services you guys offer, GenEdge, and specific to this scenario, and maybe in general other areas if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. And this, again, our presentation here today is more informational and trying to start to create some awareness. This is a whole approach that we're going to take. So this isn't really trying to sell you or anyone any particular thing. The answer is that GenEdge would be involved in the risk management piece. We would work with CIT and some other third parties to do some technical assessment. So GenEdge would be the, let's say, the architect, if you will, that kind of defines all of the different elements that you would need to review, and then we would bring in the different third parties to start to get deeper into particular areas. So we'd start out at a high level generic assessment, and then as we get more information, then we'll drill deeper and deeper and put a more technically competent third party in the mix as well.
So, to confirm, I guess to verify, this is something we're working towards, or does it currently exist, that sort of scenario, if they called you tomorrow to engage in this?
Yeah, if they called me tomorrow to engage in this, we are in a position to take that on. Okay. We would take that on in a early stage point of view, though. So this is not like something that we've got, canned and are ready to do 100 of these things. So this is, you would be an early adopter into this. And so the short answer is yes. The longer answer is, we're just beginning to do this specifically around cybersecurity. We've done it for many years, just in general business continuity planning, but with the specific twist on cyber, we're planning on, we're going to execute this beginning in January of 2016.
Yeah, so just to put it a different way, we're viewing this as a pilot program right now, but actually this webinar is sort of the official start of the pilot. So.
Great. Great. So we will, and again, we'll send the presentation out to everybody, as well as post this entire recording on our website for follow-on viewing. If you need to get your boss behind this, if you're not the boss, or your CTO or some other techie, to understand what we're developing here in the context of the whole webinar that we presented today. So, and with that, there are no other questions.
On the risk.
Go ahead.
Yeah, on the risk side of this thing, Robert. Yeah, just real quick to add on. From the risk side standpoint, this is a senior management level issue. This is not something that gets delegated, to the IT department or even to somebody that's handling your insurance. This is a business management, senior management level issue of addressing the areas where you're looking at potential loss, and the policies and structure that the business needs to take in order to protect that, and then individual point solutions get driven out into different parts of the business. So you're going to have lots of different people involved in this over time, but this isn't something that can be just delegated off. That's the clear message and observation that Dave and I were able to make by going on and talking to quite a number of different C-level people in industrial companies around Virginia over the last year and a half. They want to try to think it's just an IT issue, but it's not. It's a business level issue. So all parties need to be driven in this by the CEO of the organization.
Yeah, I think that was the big sort of new discovery that came out of the Target breach, was that CEOs and boards of directors are now being held responsible and liable for addressing and dealing with these types of risk.
Yeah, definitely.
Great.
Yeah, there's personal exposure with Sarbanes-Oxley and everything else. I mean, the C-level people, public companies particularly, but in private companies, there's personal risk involved in not complying with the evolution that's going on.
Well, I'll put one last plug into both the offerings of GenEdge as well as CIT and Mach 37 that we, I think combined, all of us are looking to engage with early stage technologists who are trying to develop new solutions to these problems, and these problems will always going to be there. They're going to, sadly, that we don't think they're going to end anytime soon, and they will evolve. And federal agencies are interested in evolving their R&D expenditures to help combat these issues. As Mach 37 is creating new companies through an accelerator process, which is a very unique way to do it, and and GenEdge Alliance has been engaged working in the manufacturing and supply chain for years. So I think between all of us, I think there's a lot of opportunity. So please reach out to us if you need help and want to learn more about the SBIR grant programs. I'm happy to talk to you if you want to learn more about the Mach 37 programs and processes for if you want to be part of the next cohort, or if you want to engage with them on a mentor level, depending on who you are. They're looking for those as well. And GenEdge is always there to engage with these processes as well. And so far, there's no other questions have come through the transom. So we will, with that, I want to thank the panelists today, Dave and Roy, for your time. And we'll be adding making sure everybody on this line is connected to any other outcomes and opportunities as we make those announcements through CIT and Mach 37 and GenEdge Alliance, so that we can make you aware of where things are next. So thank you. Please send any questions or comments you might have about today's webinar, and we look forward to hopefully speaking with you very soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Well, goodbye.
Bye-bye.